You probably have one of these in your living room right now. Maybe you got it at a grocery store checkout. Maybe a friend gave it as a housewarming gift. Maybe you picked it because it was low maintenance, looked beautiful, and everything you'd ever read said it was perfect for beginners. Nobody told you it was toxic. Not the store, not the garden center, not the influencer who filmed an entire video about the best plants for a cozy home. They showed you how to water it, how to find the right light, how to propagate it in a mason jar on your windowsill. Nobody mentioned what it does if your toddler pulls off a leaf and puts it in their mouth. Nobody mentioned what it does to your cat. Today I'm going through 15 of the most common houseplants in American homes, and for each one, I'm telling you exactly what's in it, exactly who it threatens, and exactly what to watch for. Because the gardening world has decided these plants are too beautiful to warn you about. Stick around for number 7, because the plant at number 7 has a documented history as a torture device, and it is almost certainly sitting on someone's desk within a mile of where you're watching this right now. And stay for number 1, because number 1 is the plant most often recommended as completely safe, and the reality is more complicated than anyone is telling you. This is the poison list, the only gardening channel built around what the rest of the plant world quietly skips over. Every other channel will tell you which plants heal, which plants grow fast, which plants look gorgeous in a terracotta pot. We tell you what they're not putting on the label, what history knew, what scripture is named, what the modern home decor industry decided wasn't worth mentioning when they were trying to sell you something. If you've ever walked through a garden center and thought, is any of this actually safe? This channel was made for you. Before we get into these, subscribe. This community shares information that most people go their whole lives without knowing, and we look out for each other. Hit the button now, because what I'm about to show you is something you're going to want to pass on to someone you care about. Number 15, Pothos. Epipremnum aureum. Almost every easiest plants for beginners list on the internet starts with pothos. And they're not wrong. It practically grows itself, trails beautifully, handles low light, forgives neglect. It's the plant that gave a generation of apartment dwellers their first win. Here's what most people miss. Every part of this plant contains insoluble calcium oxalate crystals, microscopic needle-like structures that embed themselves in soft tissue on contact. If a child or pet chews a leaf, those crystals drive into the lining of the mouth, throat, and digestive tract. The immediate response is intense burning, swelling, and drooling. In some animals, swallowing enough can trigger vomiting severe enough to cause dehydration. Pothos is listed by the ASPCA as toxic to both cats and dogs. It's also listed as toxic to humans, particularly small children, through the American Association of Poison Control Centers. This doesn't mean you have to throw it out. It means it doesn't belong in a room where a toddler or a pet spends unsupervised time. High shelves, hanging planters, rooms with closed doors. That's the fix. The warning was always there. Now you know where to look. Number 14, Peace Lily, Spathiphyllum. The peace lily gets recommended constantly for bedrooms and offices because it's one of the few plants that actually flowers in low light. NASA listed it in a 1989 study as an air purifying plant, and that study has been circulating ever since as validation that this plant is not just safe, it's beneficial. Same problem as pothos. Calcium oxalate crystals throughout the whole plant. Leaves, stem, roots. Same burning, same swelling, same drooling in pets. But here's the layer that the NASA study doesn't get credited with starting and doesn't get blamed for obscuring. Peace lily also contains compounds that, in larger ingested amounts, may affect the kidneys. This is specifically dangerous in cats, who are far more sensitive to certain plant compounds than dogs or humans. The ASPCA lists peace lily as toxic to both cats and dogs. Moderate to severe exposure has been associated with kidney dysfunction in felines. If you have a cat that chews plants, this one does not belong in your home, regardless of where you read it was safe. The warning was always there. Now you know where to look. Number 13, snake plant, Sansevieria trifasciata, Dracaena trifasciata. Few plants have had a better marketing decade than the snake plant. Architectural, dramatic, basically indestructible, praised by every interior design account on social media. People keep these in nurseries, offices, and pediatric waiting rooms. It contains saponins, compounds that act as natural insecticides within the plant, and that cause nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea when ingested by cats or dogs. The toxicity is classified as mild to moderate, but mild means something different when your 15-pound cat has vomited 4 times at midnight and you're trying to figure out whether this is an emergency. For adult humans in normal household contact, snake plants don't pose a serious risk. The danger is concentrated in pets and very small children who might chew leaves. The ASPCA has this confirmed on their toxic plant database, which exists, is free, and almost nobody checks before they bring a plant home. The warning was always there. Now you know where to look. Number 12, English ivy, Hedera helix. English ivy gets sold as a trailing plant for hanging baskets, window boxes, and ground cover and container arrangements. It looks soft and romantic, the kind of plant that photographs well in autumn light. It contains triterpenoid saponins, specifically hidaricoside C and alpha-heterin, which cause contact dermatitis in some people who handle it with bare hands, and gastrointestinal distress when ingested by pets or children. Skin exposure during pruning or repotting can cause redness, blistering, and itching. There's a specific failure point here that most people don't anticipate: propagating English ivy in water. A lot of home gardeners do this. It's a popular project. The water itself can become contaminated with the plant's compounds during this process. Keep water propagation vessels out of reach of pets who might drink from them. English ivy is listed as toxic to cats, dogs, and horses by the ASPCA and as a skin irritant for humans. It's also worth noting that in some U.S. states, Hedera helix is classified as an invasive species, so if you're growing it outdoors in containers that drain into garden beds, check your local regulations. The warning was always there. Now you know where to look. Number 11. Dracaena. Dracaena marginata, D. fragrans, D. reflexa. The Dracaena family, which includes the popular corn plant, Madagascar dragon tree, and Janet Craig, are some of the most common office and living room plants in the country. They're sold everywhere. They tolerate fluorescent light. They look expensive. They contain saponins, same category as the snake plant, and present the same pattern of toxicity for cats and dogs: vomiting, depression, loss of appetite, hypersalivation. In cats specifically, Dracaena ingestion has been associated with dilated pupils. Here's the thing nobody says plainly enough. There are dozens of plants in the Dracaena genus, and they're all listed under the same general toxicity profile. If you have a cat, the entire genus is one to avoid or keep completely inaccessible, not just the one variety you recognize by name. The average emergency vet visit for plant ingestion runs between $500 and $2,000, depending on severity and treatment required. That's not a scare number. That's the VCA Animal Hospital's published range for plant toxicity cases. A hanging pot or a room with a closed door costs nothing. The warning was always there. Now you know where to look. Number 10. Caladium. Caladium bicolor and related species. Caladiums are the showpiece of the houseplant world. Enormous leaves patterned in pink, white, burgundy, and green, the kind of plant that stops people in a garden center. They're also sold as seasonal porch and container plants in warm climates. Every part of the plant contains insoluble calcium oxalate crystals, the same mechanism as pothos and peace lily. But caladium leaves are large and tactilely appealing, which means children are more likely to handle them and dogs or cats more likely to bite into one. The ASPCA lists caladium as toxic to cats, dogs, and horses. Ingestion causes oral irritation, pain, swelling, vomiting, and difficulty swallowing. In severe cases, particularly in small animals, airway swelling has been reported. If you're growing caladiums outdoors in containers that you bring inside for winter, that's the moment of highest risk. Seasonal adjustment, plant moved to floor level during transition, and nobody thinks of it as a danger because it's always been outside. The warning was always there. Now you know where to look. Number 9. Aloe vera. This is where it starts getting uncomfortable for people, because aloe vera is not just considered safe, it's considered medicinal. Gel from the inner leaf is widely and legitimately used to soothe burns. You may have one on your kitchen windowsill specifically for that purpose. Here's what the wellness industry doesn't put in the caption. The latex layer of aloe vera, the yellow sap that sits just beneath the outer skin of the leaf, contains anthraquinone glycosides, which are potent laxatives. Consumed internally in significant amounts, it can cause severe diarrhea and electrolyte imbalance. For pets, aloe vera is listed as toxic by the ASPCA. The saponins and other compounds cause vomiting, diarrhea, lethargy, and changes in urine color. The gel from the inner leaf, the clear, thick portion, is the part with legitimate topical uses. The latex is the part that causes problems when consumed. They come from the same leaf, and most people don't know they're different substances. Keep aloe out of reach of pets. Use the inner gel topically. Don't juice the whole leaf, and don't let anyone tell you that because it heals burns on the outside, it's safe to eat on the inside. The warning was always there. Now you know where to look. We're about halfway through, and I want to make sure you're still with me, because what's coming in the second half is where this gets genuinely alarming. The plants we've covered so far are the ones that cause harm through contact and ingestion. The ones coming up are the ones that look the most innocent, that get recommended the most confidently, and that have the most serious documented consequences. Stay with me, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. This community exists so that the people who care about protecting their homes and families have somewhere to come for the information nobody else is sharing. Number 8. Philodendron. Philodendrons are as common as pothos, and almost as frequently recommended without any warning attached. The split-leaf varieties have been a fixture of interior design since the 1970s. The heartleaf philodendron is one of the most propagated plants in the world. Same compound family as pothos, insoluble calcium oxalate crystals throughout the entire plant. Same mechanism, embedding in soft tissue on contact. Toxic to cats and dogs per the ASPCA. Toxic to humans in ingested quantities, particularly dangerous to young children. What makes philodendron worth calling out separately is the propagation culture around it. Heartleaf philodendron is one of the most shared plants in gardening communities. Cuttings passed between neighbors, given as gifts, propagated in glass jars on kitchen counters. Every single cutting carries the same toxic compounds as the parent plant. The jar of water sitting on your counter with a stem in it is not inert. If you love this plant and want to keep it, keep it. Just keep it high, keep it away from pets, and wash your hands after handling it. The warning was always there. Now you know where to look. Number 7. Dieffenbachia seguin and related species. This is the one I told you about in the opening, and the history here is something the gardening world has almost entirely erased. Dieffenbachia's common name is dumb cane, and that name is not a coincidence. The same calcium oxalate crystals present in pothos and philodendron exist in Dieffenbachia in extreme concentration. When the sap of this plant enters the mouth and throat, the crystals cause such severe swelling and inflammation that speech becomes impossible. In serious exposures, the swelling can make swallowing difficult. In rare and severe cases, it can compromise breathing. Documented historical accounts, and this is recorded in the history of the Caribbean under colonial slavery, describe Dieffenbachia being used as a punishment and torture instrument. Captors forced enslaved people to chew the plant. The resulting swelling rendered the person unable to speak for hours or days. That is where the name dumb cane comes from. It is not a charming folk name, it is a record of deliberate harm. This plant is sold in virtually every garden center and grocery store, with no label indicating any of this. For pets and small children, the ASPCA and poison control both listed as toxic, causing intense oral burning, drooling, vomiting, and swelling. For adults, handling with bare hands while pruning can cause skin irritation from sap contact. If you have this plant in a home with small children or pets, relocate it to a completely inaccessible location, or consider replacing it with something that doesn't carry this profile. The warning was always there. Now you know where to look. Number 6. Monstera deliciosa. Monstera has become one of the defining aesthetic objects of the last decade. On wallpaper, on tote bags, tattooed on forearms, printed on throw pillows. Its split-leaf silhouette is recognized by people who have never grown a plant in their life. It is also toxic to cats and dogs. Insoluble calcium oxalate crystals, ASPCA listed, same irritant mechanism as everything above it on this list. The fruit of Monstera deliciosa, the name means delicious monster, is technically edible when fully ripe. Unripe fruit contains calcium oxalate crystals as well, and will cause the same oral irritation. Most Monstera grown as houseplants in temperate climates never fruit at all, but if yours does, do not harvest and consume it until it is visibly fully ripe, with the scales separating on their own. The visual ubiquity of this plant is precisely what makes it dangerous. It's so normalized, so aestheticized, so thoroughly absorbed into mainstream decor culture that nobody thinks of it as something to be cautious about. The warning was always there. Now you know where to look. Number 5. Amaryllis, Hippeastrum species. Amaryllis is a holiday plant. Bulb kits are sold at Costco, at Target, at every garden center in November and December. Grow your own dramatic bloom indoors, red and white and pink, right in time for Christmas. The entire plant, bulb, stem, leaves, flower, contains lycorine and other phenanthridine alkaloids. These compounds cause vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, excessive salivation, and lethargy in cats and dogs. The bulb has the highest concentration, which matters because forced bulb kits often arrive with the bulb partially exposed and sitting in a shallow dish. A dog that finds an amaryllis kit on a low table during the holidays, chews the bulb, and is not seen doing it is a dog that gets sick overnight for reasons the owner may not immediately connect. This is one of the most common seasonal toxicity calls to the ASPCA Animal Poison Control Center in November and December. Every year. The same plant, the same gift kit, the same call. If you receive one as a gift or buy one for someone else, keep it elevated and away from animals for its entire indoor life, not just when it's blooming. The warning was always there. Now you know where to look. Number 4. Kalanchoe. Kalanchoe blosfeldiana and related species. Kalanchoe is a small, cheerful succulent sold in grocery stores and pharmacies year-round, usually positioned near the checkout in clusters of bright orange, red, yellow, and pink. It looks completely benign. It's cheap, low maintenance, and widely given as a casual gift. It contains bufadinolides, cardiac glycosides that affect heart muscle function. In cats and dogs, ingestion can cause abnormal heart rhythm, weakness, collapse, and in severe cases, death. This is not a plant that causes mild discomfort. The toxicity profile of kalanchoe is serious, and it is sold with no warning at checkout lines across the country. The ASPCA lists it as toxic to cats and dogs. If you have animals in your home, kalanchoe does not belong in a place they can reach it. And given that grocery store placement usually means floor level or low shelf level, the default retail presentation is exactly the worst possible situation. The warning was always there. Now you know where to look. Number 3. ZZ plant, Zamioculcas zamifolia. The ZZ plant has surged in popularity because it is, objectively, nearly impossible to kill. Low light, low water, slow growth, architectural look. Every "Plants for People Who Kill Plants" article includes it. The ZZ plant contains calcium oxalate crystals, placing it in the same family as pothos and Dieffenbachia for its primary irritant mechanism. Toxic to cats and dogs per the ASPCA. In humans, the sap can cause skin and eye irritation. Wash your hands after pruning, and don't touch your face while handling it. Here's the layer that is rarely stated directly. The ZZ plant is in the family Araceae, the same plant family as philodendron, pothos, Dieffenbachia, peace lily, caladium, and monstera. Every plant on this list from number 15 through number 3 that contains calcium oxalate crystals belongs to this same botanical family. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. If you see a new, unfamiliar plant being sold and you want a quick first-pass toxicity check, look up the family name. Araceae is the family to know. If you have pets or small children and someone hands you a beautiful trailing or broad-leafed plant, that's your first question to research. The warning was always there. Now you know where to look. Number 2. Sago palm, Cycas revoluta. The sago palm is not actually a palm. It is a cycad, one of the oldest plant lineages on Earth, unchanged for roughly 200 million years. It is sold as a houseplant, a patio container plant, and widely used in outdoor landscaping in warm climates from Florida to California to the Gulf Coast. It looks tropical, dramatic, and safe. It is one of the most toxic plants to dogs that exists in general retail circulation. Every part of the sago palm, seeds, leaves, roots, contains cycacin, a compound that causes severe liver failure in dogs. The seeds have the highest concentration. A single seed can be enough to kill a dog, depending on its size. The ASPCA Animal Poison Control Center has identified sago palm as one of the most common causes of fatal plant toxicity in dogs in the United States. The survival rate for dogs that have consumed sago palm and are treated promptly is estimated around 50%. Untreated, the prognosis is significantly worse. This plant is sold at Home Depot, at Lowe's, at garden centers, and at Walmart garden sections with no signage indicating its toxicity. In states like Florida, it is so ubiquitous in landscaping that many dog owners have no idea it's even a possibility. If you have a dog, this is the single most important piece of information on this entire list. Check your yard. Check your neighbor's yards if your dog visits. Check any patio or outdoor seating area your dog has access to. The warning was always there. Now you know where to look. Number 1. Oleander, Nerium oleander. Oleander is one of the most beautiful flowering plants in the world and one of the most toxic plants known to exist. Every single part of it, leaves, flowers, stems, roots, the water in a vase that held cut branches, contains cardiac glycosides, specifically oleandrin and nerine. These compounds interfere directly with heart muscle function. Ingestion by humans or animals can cause nausea, vomiting, irregular heart rhythm, low blood pressure, and in serious cases, cardiac arrest. Historical poisoning cases, some deliberate, some accidental, are documented across centuries and across cultures. It has been used as a poison in at least 2 confirmed historical murder cases in Europe. It was suspected in ancient and medieval poisoning accounts across the Mediterranean. Oleander is planted in highway medians, in public park borders, in school courtyard planters, and in residential front yards across the American South and West. It is sold in full flower at garden centers every spring. It is not a rare plant or a specialty plant. It is everywhere. The reason it belongs at number 1 on this list isn't just the severity of its toxicity. It's the gap between how it's treated by the public and what it actually is. Nobody plants oleander thinking they're putting a cardiac toxin in their front yard. The landscape industry has normalized it as a flowering hedge with no asterisk, no caution label, and no conversation about what happens if a child puts a flower in their mouth or a dog chews a branch. Proverbs 14:12 says, "There is a way that appears to be right, but in the end, it leads to death." That verse was written about something much larger than landscaping choices, but the principle holds. Something can look completely right, be widely accepted, be aesthetically beautiful, and still carry a harm that nobody bothered to name. 15 plants. Most of them in your home right now, or your neighbor's yard, or the garden center you'll walk through next weekend. Sold without warnings, promoted for their beauty, shared between friends who had no idea they were passing along something dangerous. This isn't about fear. It's not about throwing away every plant in your house. Most of what we covered today can be kept safely with simple changes: a higher shelf, a closed door, washing your hands. The plants didn't change. The information did. What changed today is that you know. You know the family name to look out for. You know which holiday gift to keep off the floor. You know what dumb cane means and where that name came from. You know to check your yard for sago palm before you let your dog out. That knowledge costs nothing. What it protects is worth everything. Here's my question for you this week, and I genuinely want to hear this in the comments. Which one of these plants do you already have in your home? And did you know before today? Drop it below, whether it's pothos on every shelf, a sago palm in the front yard you had no idea about, or an amaryllis kit you just ordered for Christmas. If you share this with someone today, a neighbor with a dog, a friend with a toddler, a parent who just redecorated, that's this channel doing exactly what it's here to do. Subscribe if you haven't yet, because we cover the gardening world's unsaid things every week, plainly, specifically, and without dressing it up to make it easier to sell you something. Come back, bring someone with you.